We have commentators laughing at this.
Washington has done that incredibly well so far. Reese missed the first one, still with it blocked.
They realized that they were laughing and then quickly stopped themselves. Like, oh, I can't laugh. I'm live right now. I can't laugh. I'm live right now. Let me get real serious.
What happens when a brand bets on noise instead of numbers? Reebok circled a year, 2026, picked a name, Angel Reese, and told the world to watch. The promise is simple. Turn attention into influence, influence into sales, and sales into a comeback. But attention has a sharp edge. 1 week it crowns you. The next week it replays the same 3 seconds from a bad night over and over until the clip becomes the story. This isn't just about a shoe. It's a gamble on what wins in the modern game. Efficiency or electricity, clean box scores or cultural pull. The highlight reels say one thing. The percentages argue back. The team results add their own twist. Somewhere in the middle is a player who moves conversation every time she checks in, and a company that decided conversation is a currency worth spending. So here's the real question. Did Reebok spot a culture driver before the numbers caught up? Or did they lock the launch date on a narrative that can't survive the fourth quarter? Keep that in mind, because what comes next isn't speculation. It's the paper trail, the clips, the context, and the consequences, all pointing to whether 2026 becomes a victory lap or a very expensive lesson.
The Washington Mystics just put belt to ass on Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky. Sonia Citron was out there cooking with hot grease. Stir the pot. Stir the pot. Keep cooking, Sonia. That was a show. She put on a flat-out show versus Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky. Boy, did they ruin Angel Reese's homecoming.
It started with a handshake and a headline, a heritage brand trying to claw back relevance, a polarizing rookie who could flood a timeline on a slow Tuesday. Put them together, and you get a wager bigger than a contract. That conversation beats calculation. The logic sounds airtight in the boardroom. She moves culture. She trends on bad nights and explodes on good ones. She brings a new audience that doesn't memorize true shooting percentage, but knows exactly how a clip feels at 1.25x speed. If you're rebuilding a basketball line, why not attach it to the loudest signal in the room? There's a second layer too. Legacy matters. Names like Iverson and Shaq still echo. Tie that past to someone who commands the present, and you can skip a few rungs on the ladder. Announce a signature, name a target date, turn the countdown into marketing by itself. Every game becomes prelude. Every headline becomes pre-sell. But a bet is still a bet. Attention is a fragile currency, and it can flip fast. The same scroll that crowns you will meme you by dinner. The same audience that shows up for the drama will vanish if the story stops evolving. Brands survive on predictability. Viral moments don't come with a schedule, so the setup is simple and dangerous. A company promises a moment in the future, and a player is asked to carry that promise week after week, clip after clip, while the numbers argue back in real time. That's the wager, and it only gets harder from here. But that wasn't the whole story. The hype machine didn't wait for the box score.
The Chicago Bravado once again got their ass kicked. Angel Reese was so bad last night, the announcers calling the game, they were laughing at her performance. Check out some highlights for yourself. Well, KC, you always do this. You select a couple of bad plays and try to convince us that Angel Reese isn't a superstar.
Before the numbers could settle, the story was already in motion. Teaser images slipped onto feeds. Sneaker blogs broke down midsole shapes like they were stock charts. Interviews framed this as a revival, heritage energy, a fresh face, a promise stamped with a year. That's how you convert curiosity into countdown. You set a date and let the internet do the rest. The pitch wasn't subtle. Tie a modern lightning rod to a legacy built on swagger. Whisper Iverson. Nod to Shaq. Say culture enough times, and suddenly a colorway feels like a statement. You don't need a stat sheet when you can sell a feeling. And the feeling was clear. This shoe is bigger than a box score. Rollout strategy 101. Make the pre-release the product. Every leak becomes a conversation. Every caption becomes a test balloon. Even doubt fuels demand, because debate is oxygen online. If half the timeline says it's a reach and the other half says it's a reset, both sides are still refreshing. But early hype cuts both ways. When the marketing clock starts a year out, every game turns into a referendum. A cold spell doesn't just nudge a season, it dings a narrative. That's the tax you pay for getting out in front. You win attention, and you owe proof. Still, the brand was banking on patience. Confidence says the arc bends up, the finishing sharpens, the tape looks cleaner by the time pairs hit shelves. Confidence also knows that highlight culture forgets fast. Today's clip fades when tomorrow's moment lands. The engine was humming. The promise had a shape, a name, and a deadline. All it needed now was fuel from the court. But that wasn't the whole story, because the clips that fueled the buzz started arguing with the eye test. Clips don't ask for context. They fly across your screen, loop twice, and decide the mood before anyone checks a box score. One sequence, 4 point-blank tries in a blur, became shorthand for everything skeptics wanted to say. It didn't matter that the defense collapsed or that arms crowded the glass. What people saw was simple: the ball at the rim and the net refusing. That's how narratives harden. A 5-second montage can outweigh 5 weeks of steady work. Self-rebounds look chaotic on camera. Misses stack louder than makes. And once the soundtrack turns snarky, even a clean finish later in the game feels like a footnote to the meme. The eye test fed the fire. When touch around the cup wavers, it reads as hesitation. When footwork freezes for half a beat, it reads as second guessing. Slow motion doesn't forgive, it magnifies. A small hitch turns into a headline. A crowded paint turns into a punchline. But clips are merciless because they're frictionless. They strip away fatigue, matchups, whistles, spacing, all the context that decides how a possession lives or dies. They don't show the next possessions either. The hard screen that freed a guard, the rotation that forced a turnover, the rebound that started a run. They show the stumble, not the steps. None of that erases the problem the clips point at: finishing. If your game lives at the rim, the margin for error is thin. Touch needs to be repeatable. Angles need to be automatic. The camera won't grade on a curve. It will grade on whether the ball drops. So the timeline made up its mind. Attention up, patience down. And when patience thins, numbers become the only language anyone trusts. But that wasn't the whole story. The stats had their say, and they didn't blink. Clips can mislead. Percentages don't. When most of your looks come at point-blank range, you're expected to live well above 50%. That's the unwritten rule of the paint. When that mark slips, every miss feels heavier than the last. Finishing isn't a highlight. It's a habit. Soft hands. Quick angles. One gather, one step, one release. When that rhythm breaks, it shows up everywhere. On the glass, in your touch, in the win column. The tape may argue context. The math doesn't. There's also the tempo tax. If you rebound your own miss, you buy another chance. But you also give the defense a second to reset. What looks like effort can quietly become extra attempts to get one bucket. The numbers see the difference even when the timeline doesn't. Free throws tell another story. Drawing contact is a skill. Converting is a must. If points at the line are doing the heavy lifting, it's a clue. The rim touch isn't where it needs to be yet. Great for surviving a night. Not enough to silence a month of questions. Team metrics echo it back. When a front court finisher struggles at the rim, spacing shrinks, drives get crowded, and turnovers creep in. It's not a blame game, it's gravity. One inefficiency bends the floor for everyone. And this is the part brands can't market around. You can package personality. You can stage a reveal. You can't gloss a shot that won't fall. The numbers call your bluff every night, and they don't care about rollouts or taglines. Yet here's the twist. Even with the percentages arguing, the box score keeps finding big lines. Volume boards, second chance points, bruising nights that pull attention anyway. For every clip that stings, there's a box score that shouts back. Nights with 20-something boards. Second chances wrestled out of crowds. Possessions extended until the defense finally cracks. That kind of relentlessness isn't pretty, but it travels. It drags a team through dry spells. It keeps you in games you should have lost by halftime. There's a human gravity to it too. Teammates feel safer when somebody eats glass. Coaches can script around a steady rebound stream. Fans lean in for energy plays even when touch deserts you. That's the paradox. Efficiency can wobble while impact still throbs through the pace, the tempo, the noise in the building. And culture doesn't just count points, it counts presence. Post-game bites that ripple beyond the box score. Tunnel fits that trend before warm-ups. A fan base that shows up for the aura as much as the outcome. Brands notice when a name can move conversation on an off day. That's why the narrative never fully tips. The eye test narrows to misses. The wider lens sees minutes, collisions, and will. You can critique touch and still admit the motor is elite. You can question polish and still concede the platform is real. So the counterweight stands, production that piles up in messy ways, and a pull that refuses to fade when the net does. It's not the clean, clinical dominance of the stat nerd dream. It's noisy, physical, marketable, and it keeps the bet alive. Stat nerd dream. It's noisy, physical, marketable, and it keeps the bet alive. Reebok isn't selling a spreadsheet, it's selling a comeback story. In that lane, noise is leverage. If a name can dominate the scroll on a Tuesday afternoon, a product line can piggyback on that momentum when Friday's drop hits. The calculation isn't subtle. Consistent attention compounds like interest. There's also the heritage hedge. A brand with a Hall of Fame archive can borrow credibility from its past while it bets on a louder present. Mention the legends, nod to the old silhouettes, then hand the mic to someone who can spark debate on command. Even the arguments become advertising. Every "is she ready" thread still spells the brand's name correctly. Budgets matter, too. Superstars with spotless resumes are expensive and already spoken for. A rising figure with a fervent audience costs less up front and gives more room to build a narrative from the ground up. If the arc climbs, you look prophetic. If it plateaus, you pivot the story toward lifestyle, community, and attitude. That flexibility is part of the plan. The early unveil fits the same playbook. Tease a year out and you create a long runway of touchpoints. Color leaks, athlete diaries, behind-the-scenes molds, community pop-ups. You don't need wins every week if you can keep the storyline breathing, drop by drop, until launch. Hype becomes a drip campaign. And while the box score wobbles, the brand can spotlight everything that doesn't show up in field goal percentage, edge, resilience, work-in-progress honesty. You shape the message around growth instead of perfection. You make the rough edges the hook. This is effort you can wear. Partnerships amplify it. Tie into league moments, fan events, and creator ecosystems that thrive on conversation. The shoe becomes a node in a network. Clips, challenges, tunnels, podcasts, rather than a lonely SKU on a shelf. When the ecosystem hums, an off night doesn't kill the current. There's risk baked in, of course, but Reebok's wager isn't blind. It's diversified across narrative, nostalgia, and a fan base that shows up at scale. If the finishing improves, the story writes itself. If it doesn't, the brand still owns months of mindshare that competitors paid more to rent for a week. That's the math. Attention as fuel, heritage as ballast, flexibility as insurance. It won't satisfy purists, but it doesn't have to. It has to move pairs. Attention buys you time. It doesn't buy you forgiveness. The longer a countdown runs, the more the story has to earn its way forward. That's where risk stops being abstract. There's the performance mismatch risk. A shoe pitched as on-court gear, strapped to a player whose touch around the rim keeps wobbling. If finishing doesn't climb, the tagline and the tape start arguing in public. There's fatigue risk. Memes hit saturation, sentiment tilts negative, and debate turns into eye rolls. And there's the team drag risk. When losses stack, even big lines feel like noise. So you set benchmarks that make sense to fans and brands. At rim touch trending north of 58 to 60% by season's end. Overall efficiency stabilizing near the mid to high 40s with turnovers flattening. 3 signature wins against winning teams where her imprint is obvious in crunch time. Net rating on-off closing the gap. Sentiment and sell-through proxies. Fewer viral lowlights than highlights. Merch capsules that move in week 1 rather than week 3. If that arc bends up, the launch writes itself. Growth, grit, receipts. If it stalls, you don't panic, you pivot. Pivot 1. Reframe to lifestyle first. Move the message from pure performance to everyday edge. Push fit, comfort, and streetwear pairings. Let the court be the origin story, not the promise. Lean into tunnels, creators, community hoops, campus pop-ups. The shoe becomes a uniform for confidence, not a stat buff. Pivot 2. Make the grind the hero. Turn development into content. Weekly microdocs with skills coaches. Finishing drills, footwork labs, touch progressions. Not a montage, measurable reps. When improvement shows up on tape, the narrative shifts from can she to watch her. The product inherits the momentum. Pivot 3. Milestone colorways. Tie drops to proof points. A rebound record capsule, a rivalry game win. A community court renovation. Each colorway stamps a chapter. Even skeptics respect receipts when they're printed on leather. Pivot 4. Shared spotlights. Cross-collab with a defensive anchor, a veteran guard, or a rising creator athlete. A dual campaign spreads the load and reframes the shoe as a team play, not a solo bet. Pivot 5. Adjust the clock. If the curve is flat, slow the release without calling it a delay. Add a prototype limited run, gather feedback, tweak tooling. Scarcity buys grace. Iteration buys credibility. None of this is surrender. It's how smart brands steer when the road changes. The bet can still pay if the story matures from volume to value, from loud minutes to lasting moments. Changes. The bet can still pay if the story matures from volume to value, from loud minutes to lasting moments. Every countdown ends the same way, with a box opening and a scoreboard nobody can mute. If the touch at the rim climbs and the tape earns more nods than winces, the narrative flips fast. What looked like a reach becomes foresight. The shoe stops being a conversation and starts being a habit. on blacktops, in gyms, in tunnels where cameras wait for the walk. If the curve stalls, the market will say it out loud. Hype without proof turns heavy. A performance pitch without performance gets reshelved as style. That isn't failure so much as a reroute. But reroutes cost time. And time is the one thing a set launch date refuses to give back. So the question isn't, was the bet bold? It was. The question is simpler and sharper. Can the game catch up to the story in time? If it does, 2026 reads like a clean arc. Heritage reborn, culture captured, receipts stapled to highlights. If it doesn't, the release becomes a lesson brands study in quiet rooms. Attention is fuel, not the finish line. Between now and then, every possession is leverage. Every night is a chance to nudge the plot 1 degree toward inevitable. And when the box finally opens, the verdict won't come from captions or press releases. It'll come from the sound shoes make when they sell out or don't.